Okay, now I add you as co-host, Peter.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
I'm using my phone to transmit the voice,
Hmm.
but I need to use my computer to start the presentation. So hopefully it's gonna work. And so can I start the presentation now?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Yes, please. Now we can hear you and everything.
Okay, perfect. I will try to. So good. So can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So yes, so my presentation is about adherence to Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities in Czech psychiatric hospitals. And I would start with deinstitutionalization and its motives. And as I'm sure you know, one of the main motives for psychiatric deinstitutionalization was non-adherence to human rights. And this was depicted famously in a book and then in a movie called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And we have seen many reports linking violations of human rights to psychiatric institutionalization. Uh, as I said, human rights was one of the motives, but also the invention of effective psychopharmacology and the belief of the government that care in the community is going to be cheaper than the care in psychiatric hospital. All these three motifs were the main drivers of deinstitutionalization, which started in 50 and then was successfully pursued in many post-industrial countries, but not in Central and Eastern Europe. And this was because of the ideological reason, because communist societies, uh, according to the ideology, didn't have officially any social problems. And if there were social problems, there were residues of capitalism which gonna diminish spontaneously with the progress of communism. So what it practically meant, and what was one of the negative consequences, was that if there were social problems, they were tried to be hidden by the communist government. So there were ghettos for Roma created, but there were also people with mental health problems hidden in psychiatric hospitals. So communist government didn't have this motivation to deinstitutionalize mental health care system. And even after the revolutions in 1989 to 1991 and the dissolution of the former Soviet Union, so even 25 years after the dissolution of the former Soviet Union, the deinstitutionalization effort um, has not um, started very much. They were not backed by governments, at least. Um, Such a reform was initiated in the Czech Republic, and it was one of the first countries in the region which came up with a strategy of mental health care reform, which was backed by Ministry of Health and by government. Until that time, in the whole Central and Eastern Europe, the reforms were usually initiated by some enthusiasts and some NGOs, but not they were not backed by government. So we were one of the first countries which actually backed the mental health care reform by government. Ministry of Health published a strategy of mental health care reform, and it said that the main aim of the reform is to ensure that the human rights of people with mental health problems are respected in all possible aspects. And so one of the activities that we did to implement the mental health care reform was that we used the WHO Quality Rights Toolkit, which is a tool that enables to measure adherence to CRPD, which is a United Nations document promoting, protecting, and ensuring the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities, and promoting respect for their inherent dignities. And this tool is taking this and operationalize it into a toolkit, which then enables to assess different institutions and measure to what extent they adhere to the CRPD. So one of the activities that we did within the mental health care reform that we
Peter,
yes,
one second. That we do not see the slides moving.
no, you don't see the slides moving.
No,
Okay,
it happened as
so
well to Murphy. So probably instead of full screen, if this is you know how to full screen. Murphy, can you tell him how you fix it? Because it also happened to him before.
it is better. Can you see my slides moving now?
Now, yeah.
Okay, good. So sorry for that. We are here, and I said that one of the activities that we did within the mental health care reform that was to assess psychiatric hospitals in the Czech Republic with this WHO quality rights toolkits that I just described. And there are 21 psychiatric hospitals in the Czech Republic. There are 3 for child and adolescent population, 3 separate for addictions, 1 for organic mental problems, and 15 psychiatric hospitals primarily for people with severe mental illnesses. Out of these, 18 psychiatric hospitals are public, and 16 of them are run by Ministry of Health and Ministry of Health of the Czech Republic. 2 are regional. And we did a pilot evaluation of the psychiatric hospitals, of 2 service psychiatric hospitals, when we took 1 small psychiatric hospital and 1 large psychiatric hospital, and we assessed that it's the WHO quality rights toolkit in 2017, and then we followed up on that, and we invited all psychiatric hospitals to participate in additional assessment, which took place in 2018. So out of all invited hospitals, 16 participated in 2018, and we had 1 evaluation that we took from 2017. So basically, I'm going to speak about results for 17 out of 21 psychiatric hospitals that are in the Czech Republic. The WHO toolkit, as I already mentioned, is composed to address the articles that are in the CRPD. You have 4 possible scores. The worst is that achievement of the specific theme or criteria was not initiated, and then the other grade is that achievement was somehow initiated, then achieved partially, and achieved fully, where there is a full adherence to the CRPD. We have also not applicable, because in some cases you cannot use the criterion in the given context. All teams, there are 5 basic teams in Quality Rights Toolkit, and all of these teams are divided into several standards, and each standard is divided into several criteria. And these criteria are scored first. They are very specifically operationalized, and then we go to the standards and then to the teams. And what I'm going to present actually is just results for not for individual criteria, but for standards and for teams. We had evaluation teams that assessed the psychiatric hospitals. Each team had 5 members. There was a psychiatrist, social worker, there was a human rights lawyer, and there was service user and researcher. And there were a couple of these teams, but each team included these professions. All of the members of the evaluation team were trained by WHO in using the instrument, the Quality Rights Toolkit. And that was a workshop which took 2 days. And and that was designed to train the team how to score, how to lead the interviews, how to avoid conflict of interest, how to keep confidentiality, etc. Then there were visits into psychiatric hospitals, and these teams, they do observation, they do analysis of documents, they do interviews with service users, with their relatives, they do interviews with staff management, they do interviews with health and social care personnel, but also with technical personnel. So basically everyone who is present in psychiatric hospital, no matter what the position the people are, they got interviewed. And the aim is to have all of these groups present in the interviews so the complex picture can be given. And then evaluation of these interviews is done through consensus. And if no consensus is made, then there is a voting, but it's basically last resort. All the time, the effort is to arrive to a consensus. I will present the data anonymously, so I won't mention any specific psychiatric hospital. I will use a graphic design to chart the results, and I will use 5 charts for each of the teams separately, and then 1 chart for the global results. And I'm not going to use these 25 charts for each of the standards because that will be too long. So let's go to the theme 1, which is the right to an adequate standard of living. And then I will guide you through the colors because now you're going to see 6 charts which are very similar. And where you see colors, the best result is in green. It's achieved in full. So, for instance, the building is in good physical condition. That's one of the standard that was assessed. That's composed of another criterion, which I'm not going to present because that will be too much detail. But what you see is that only in about 20% the buildings of psychiatric hospitals were in good condition, and in more than 10% the buildings were in a really poor condition. So, but the worst results are for the criteria for the standard 1.2, which is the sleeping conditions of service users are comfortable and allow sufficient privacy. You see that in none of the hospitals this was achieved in full, and in only slightly more than 20%, the achievement was partial. Also, very poor results for the standard 1.5, which is service users can communicate freely and their right to privacy is respected. And also poor results in terms of the standard 1.6, which is the facility provides a welcoming, comfortable, stimulating environment conducive to active participation and interaction. In these criteria, in many cases, the achievement was not even initiated. I spoke already about the criterion 1.1. In the theme 2, which is the right to enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical health, you see that the results are much better than in the previous section. In many cases, these standards were achieved fully or partially, with the exception of the standard 2.3, which relate to the care which is provided in line with user recovery plan. And that's what we found out, that recovery plans are often not part of the care in psychiatric hospitals in the Czech Republic. And I'm referring to the year 2017 and 2018 when this assessment took place, so it's 5 years back. Then the other theme, which looks into the right to exercise legal capacity and the right to personal liberty. As well, the results here are better than in the theme 1, but especially in the standard 3.1, which is service users' preferences regarding the place and form of treatment are always a priority. the results are quite poor. And in many cases, this has not been even initiated in psychiatric hospitals. Then team 4, which is freedom from torture, cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, or punishment, and from exploitation, violence, and abuse. Again, the results are better than in the team 1, but still you see some standards which are quite poor, especially the standards 4.2, which speaks about alternative methods in place of seclusion and restraint as means of de-escalation of potential crisis. Then finally, the team 5, which is the right to live independently and be included in the community. And again, as in the team 1, the results here are very poor. You see that especially in the standards 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4, which is service users can access education and employment opportunities, the right of service users to participate in political and public life and to exercise freedom of association is supported, and service users are supported in taking part in social, cultural, religious, and leisure activities respectively, are quite poor. The achievement in these standards is rarely full across psychiatric hospitals in the Czech Republic. This is the final chart, which basically summarizes what I said a couple of minutes ago, which is that the poorest results are in the team 1, which is the right to an adequate standard of living, or the Article 28 of the CRPD, and in the team 5, which is the right to live independently and be included in the community, which is an Article 19 of the CRPD. Okay, now, yes, these are the two. Now, what that all means? If you followed carefully what I said, you could make a clear conclusion that in most of the cases, the non-adherence to the Convention of Rights of People with Disabilities in Czech psychiatric hospitals is an outcome of low investments in psychiatry. The non-adherence is caused by inappropriate physical conditions, a lack of privacy, not a good place for sleep, very bad sleeping conditions, very inappropriate rooms, etc., etc. And the other part is caused by understaffing, that there is simply too many patients in psychiatric hospitals for too little personnel. This is especially concerning because what we can see in the data, why is situation like this in Czech Republic? Of course, because of these historical reasons that I mentioned in the beginning, that deinstitutionalization has not started even during the communism and 25 years after that in the Czech Republic. But also, and this is something that we see across the countries, across the globe, and that is the fact that the burden of mental illnesses and the share of the global burden of mental illnesses on the overall burden of all diseases far surpasses the allocation of health budgets to mental health services. In the Czech Republic, for instance, the share of mental illnesses on the overall burden of all illnesses, according to the Global Burden of Disease study, is about 16%. And only 4% of the health budget goes to mental health services, actually. So this is a huge structural discrimination of people with mental illnesses. And I argue that this results in human rights violations. I have been involved in many anti-stigma programs and anti-stigma campaigns, and I myself have been leading the national anti-stigma program for about 7 years now. And I'm thinking whether this effort to decrease stigmatization in the society is really the most effective way how to improve the conditions of people with mental health problems. And I'm thinking whether it could be more efficient to simply go to the court in Strasbourg and say, hey, this is a clear human rights violation. If countries across the European Union invest only a fraction of what should be invested in psychiatry, given its share on the overall burden of all illnesses. So that the main point. I think that this is more political neglect of psychiatry that leads to human rights violations, and I think it's one of the most concerning problem in the mental health care system across Europe currently. My last point is that the assessment that I just presented was done in 2017 and 2018, and fortunately, since that time, the situation has improved quite a lot. We have launched many trainings in psychiatric hospitals for staff, and there was a lot of work done within the mental health care reform. So the situation has improved, but it has not improved much in terms of investment. And in order to achieve much better results, we would need much higher investment into mental health care system. So thank you for listening. I will stop sharing my screen now, and I will get back to on Google Meet. So hopefully we can hear each other.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Yes, thank you, Henrik. So I hope that was comprehensible, and I'm ready to pick some questions or comments if there are any.
Sorry if you explained that the statistics are by center, by region, or is the entire population of the patients, like there is only a fraction that it's in the no seclusion, they are already achieving that? It is by center, it is how it's clustered, that number? Like you have achieved that for a specific kind of users, or you have achieved that already in some centers and regions?
Yeah, well, that was for 17 out of 21 psychiatric hospitals that are in the country. And we usually focused on departments of psychiatric hospitals which focus on people with severe mental illnesses, such as schizophrenia or personality disorders or any other psychotic disorder. And we have about 9,000 beds in all these psychiatric hospitals altogether.
Mm-hmm.
If nobody asks anything else at the moment, how would you invest if you had the resources that you would like to?
What was the question? What I would do if I would have enough resources?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely I would initiate a change in the system which is currently still institutionalized. I would invest into flats rather than psychiatric department of psychiatric hospitals. So to make it sure that only a very small fraction of people who really need long-term inpatient psychiatric care gets it, because this is not currently the situation, and people end up in psychiatric hospitals because there is lack of services in the community, and lack of housing, and lack of specialized mental health care teams. So I would invest in those to make it sure that we avoid all unnecessary institutionalization. That the other study that we did, and that showed that in psychiatric hospitals there are still people hospitalized for 10, 20, even 30 years. So for many people, especially back in time, basically the diagnosis of schizophrenia in many cases, especially when they were from socioeconomically disadvantaged background, the diagnosis of schizophrenia was basically a life sentence in psychiatric hospital. And that's something that we still unfortunately see, that there are people hospitalized for decades just because they don't have elsewhere to go.
I'm wondering if in terms of elsewhere to go, are there programs in the Czech Republic such as Soteria House or other kind of residential alternatives that are available? Alternative models to the mainstream that are.
Yes, not Soteria model or a model like this, but we have we have community mental health teams and community mental health services, and most often they have some accommodation capacities as well. So they work within the regions, within the towns, and within the cities, and they usually have some accommodation capacity which they are able to use. So then people with severe mental health problems can benefit from those, and they can get both accommodation and supported services by specialized community mental health centers.
Yeah, Peter, you may have said this, you may have answered this question, but can people be involuntarily committed to hospitals in Czechoslovakia? Can they, in the Czech Republic, can they be basically hospitalized against their will or treated against their will?
Yes, they can, if they are potentially dangerous to themselves or to people around them. And this is quite a problem because it's the court who decides about this. And so we have a case of, I can recall a case of a 16-year-old boy who got his first episode of psychosis, and during which he was violent to people around him. He got secluded by court, but also he got proper treatment, and he is stabilized for now about 2 years. He didn't have any other episode of psychosis, but because the court was too slow to decide about basically cancellation of these of this seclusion, then this boy is still in psychiatric hospital. So he basically is functioning very well. He is no longer for 2 years dangerous to himself or to people around him, but he's still in psychiatric hospital because court has not been able to decide otherwise for these 2 years. And obviously this person is missing his education for 2 years. And he is also in a unit where are people who are, really dangerous. So this is clearly very bad for his development. So there are still cases like this, and it's but what I argue is that it's not a fault of individuals. It's a fault of the system, actually.
Yeah, are there organizations who are trying to change? Are there private, nonprofit organizations trying to change things, trying to influence legislators, influence the government, et cetera, to to not allow for that kind of thing?
Yes, there are. And occasionally this is taken to mainstream media, which forces politicians to say something about it and to make some promises. But the development is really slow, I would say. Or it depends on the perspective, right? Like from one point of view, if you take what is realistically possible to change in a couple of years when the whole system has been neglected for more than half a century, then you can argue that the progress is quite significant and quick. But from the perspective of service user or this boy that I, just described this case, obviously it's too slow. So it depends on the perspective. But yes, and within the mental health care reform, one of the biggest achievements that I'm proud of is that we have been able to support service users organization. When the reform started, it was not usual that a service user would participate in decision making in service provision, etc. And there was only one or two service user organizations across the country which were not functioning very well. Nowadays, no decision is taken without people with lived experience to be present. Care is usually provided also by people with lived experience. So there is peer workers in psychiatric hospitals, in community mental health centers, and in other services. And the number of organizations has risen dramatically, and there is even an umbrella of service users organizations. So the progress in this is there, but it's very difficult in terms of shifting the ways how the health budget is spent, because that's based on tradition, and I would definitely argue that it should reflect the burden of diseases, right? So if the burden of mental health illnesses is about 16%, that about 16% from the health budget should go to mental health. But it's only 4%. And to shift this is very difficult, because then you have to face the opposition from all other healthcare professions, because you would need to take the money from somewhere else. And then obviously, when it comes to leukemia, when it comes to all kinds of cancers, when it comes to other problems, these are much stronger in terms of public opinion and in terms of political influence. So that's very difficult, even if there are these organizations and individuals that are speaking for the rights of people with mental health problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Peter, how hard is to make the case of the need for this to stop resources from being wasted socially if the problem is not attended properly? If the person is there, the situation gets worse or not improves, that not only in the health system, but it causes more trouble, and it's also human capital that is lost, if you want to look at it like that. But it is really a problem that is not well attended socially. How hard it is to not self-present it as it is, that if there is a need that needs to be fulfilled, it's not taking money from tuberculosis or any other specialty. It should be something that needs to be attended, because otherwise have consequences for the society.
Yes.
How hard it is
Yes,
to prevent that?
Well, that's extremely hard. And one of the approach that has been taken is And one of the hypotheses is that that this is because of stigma, right? So there is a hypothesis that this structural discrimination is caused by stigma, that people with mental health problems are stigmatized. Psychiatry as a field is also stigmatized within the medicine, and that this structural discrimination is a result of stigmatization. So the assumption is, if we decrease stigma, this is going to change. But I'm no longer very much believing in this. And I think that more maybe direct action is needed. And I really think that it might be far more quicker and efficient to take this into the Court for Human Rights in Strasbourg and say, hey, this is simply not acceptable for government to continue in this disproportionate financing of mental health, because that leads to human rights violation.
This is wonderful coming from you. I mean,
That Court for Human Rights in Strasbourg, is that under the United Nations? What organization is that under?
It's a European Union court.
That's the European
I
Union.
believe. Yes, am I right? Right?
We need one of those in North America.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. It's a European Court of Human Rights.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it has taken also international cases in some points, but it's let me double check. But I do believe that for war crimes in other countries, sometimes it has taken cases. In any circumstance, what you are doing is your own government, from your position of authority in mental health, saying you need to address this, and it is not on me, it is on you, because you are not offering me the resources I need to do it properly. This is wonderful, Peter. May I ask, and what are the prospects of this going forward, and how to initiate it?
How to, sorry, say it again?
I know for other networks in Europe that there has been cases that have been brought there, and some countries have lost cases in that court.
Yeah.
I do not know what are the consequences if really they have achieved what they wish to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, well, usually when there is a decision by European Court for Human Rights, that are usually taken seriously by individual countries. But the thing is that this is usually decision in terms of individual cases. So it's individuals whose human rights were violated, and then there might be some penalty for the countries, etc. But it's usually in the individual cases. It's not on this systematic level. So I don't know any decision that would be on such a systematic level, and what would be the results of that. I'm familiar just with individual cases.
So yeah, Al, just to confirm, the European Court of Human Rights has taken like Uganda genocide, these kind of things. I'm not saying that it's gonna be easy if you try to push anything related to mental health here, but for a colleague in Norway, there have been cases of people being tied in a bed for too long. These kind of things. They have won cases. Yeah.
Or this makes me think that, even if it's difficult to actually take a case to these courts, as I'll suggest it might even be more difficult in North America because I'm not even sure what venue that would be. Maybe just there could just be a lawsuit. But given the activism that I mentioned in my talk, that several activists involved in ISPS were able to get a patient who was given forced ECT, we were able to get the hospital to relent from that, from writing to politicians in their district, and as I mentioned, I invoked the UN report that lists ECT, involuntary ECT, as a form of torture, so even if it can be hard to go to court, you can always use the court, and public declarations like that to at least, I don't know, embarrass and shame people into doing things differently, perhaps.
Yes, I agree with this. Yes, completely.
Peter, can I ask about the situation in Ukraine? You have worked on that, right? If it's something that we cannot talk about because but are they, meaning Russia,
Yes.
using psychiatry against?
Well, that I'm not very much familiar with. I'm involved more in helping Ukrainian war refugees in the Czech Republic in terms of their mental health, and also we have a couple of projects in Ukraine. But in this topic of Soviet-style psychiatry, I would recommend to speak to Robert van Warren. He's really the best expert in the area, and I don't know that much about that.
That's another situation, the refugees crisis, that also needs proper resources to, well, it is a huge trauma to heal. And there is a need to do it. Yeah, it's
What was the name of the individual you mentioned who worked on Soviet psychiatry? Robert?
It's Robert van Boren. I will write it to chat.
Okay,
and
great.
He has published a lot on that, so you can just Google his work.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I know I've come across work on Soviet psychiatry in the past. I don't remember who, but it makes me curious about psychiatry in Russia today. I'm wondering, under the current system of power, how it may have been used or abused, and whether it's used to punish political dissidents or anything like that. Maybe not.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah, this is still a problem, and Robert actually published a book on this recently, on the current political abuse of psychiatry in Russia. That's a long history. All this concept that was discovered of sluggish schizophrenia, etc., how to basically persecute the political opponent and let them down in psychiatric hospitals. Interestingly, we were part of the world that was led to the east from the former Iron Curtain. So we belong to the sphere of influence of the Soviet Russia, and but the psychiatry was used in other way around. It was used not to persecute political opponents, but to protect them. So basically, when people were persecuted by the state, usually psychiatrists hid them in psychiatric hospitals in order to avoid the police persecution. So there were many dissidents working or being hospitalized in psychiatric hospitals, and the hospitalization was that they were organizing movie clubs, they were organizing cultural programs there, they were writing their books, etc., etc., and it was kind of a shelter. So it was the other way around in former Czechoslovakia, most of them.
That's interesting. Very interesting to learn. Yeah.
Good to know.
Peter, I forgot to tell you that we are recording this. If it's okay with you, we are going to publish. And I was going to ask you now if you have any book to recommend to learn about the history of the Czech Republic using mental health to protect this. Then this is going to be so interesting to add in the references in the video, because it's really a topic that I had no idea. And it's I guess that many people doesn't know that this happened. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, well, many countries already are using the Quality Rights Toolkit actually to assess their psychiatric institutions with that instrument. So I know that Lithuania has initiated mental health care reform, and they assessed psychiatric hospitals there. And I think that psychiatric hospitals in Finland were assessed with the instrument as well. So that's a quite influential instrument, and it's really good because it operationalized the human rights in a way which is very specific. So it enables to measure the change and come up with some really practical solutions. And sometimes it's just a matter of habit, So, for instance, we found out that in one of the psychiatric hospitals, patients were not allowed to have their mobile phone. We are like asking why is that? And the answer was because we have been doing this like this for the whole time. So, but this is not the reason, So why would you not allow people to have their mobile phone? And then they come up with all the potential risks that might be involved, such as they would be able to call their dealers, for instance. So we had a couple of workshops with them, and then we agreed that we will try to, change the practice and have some kind of pilot period when people will be allowed to have their mobile phones. And of course, this was to a benefit of the patients, but also to the personnel, because then, people didn't ask them with so many questions, such as, can I call my mother? Can I call my friend? Can I use the phone to do this and that? So in the end, it's been good for both patients and staff. So this is a very nice instrument. I would definitely recommend using this regularly, especially in cases when you see that some facilities do not adhere sufficiently to CRPD.
Thank you again, Peter.
Thank you very much. Thank
Yes.
you for invitation, for a nice discussion, and I wish you success with the whole symposium.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.